Welcome to the DealerRefresh Roundtable, where we explore the hottest topics in automotive retail to help those in the industry take action, innovate, and improve. The DealerRefresh Roundtable, in the forums and on the lot.
Thanks to our sponsor, Cars.com. Whether consumers are shopping online or on the lot, Cars.com creates connections that fuel growth.
Man, welcome everybody to this live roundtable, recorded live.
We've got three topics lined up today. Number one being just around the news over the weekend of Authenticom's court victory. Let me bring that post up for everybody over CDK and Renault. So we'll talk about that for a few minutes. And then we're going to segue into our core topics today, which is automotive attribution and social ROI. And so there's a reason that Ed and Greg are with us today.
And you know, a lot of transitions these days in the car business. The news of the Authenticom injunction against CDK Reynolds for access to DMS data, that's something that's becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. You know, Greg, you've fought some battles with that. Tell us your experience with trying to get some data out of your own DMS.
Yeah, so it's a good point, and there's a couple things to kind of look at when we're talking about this topic. Let's go back to the beginning. The data. The client data, the information, everything that's housed in a typical dealership's DMS, whether it be Reynolds, the ABP, a couple of the fringe guys, that data belongs to the dealership, hypothetically, correct? We'd all agree to that. People that don't agree with that is ADP and Reynolds. And nobody has ever gone this far down this route of fight to define who that data belongs to. Is it the actual people who collect the data, meaning the dealerships, or is it the house itself that is the repository for the data, meaning the DMS? This day was due to happen. This is years in the making of, hey guys, we have been bullied around by the DMSs of the world for a long time. So what is the benefit of having that data? I think a lot of people could probably benefit to understanding what Authenticom does. And what Authenticom does is extremely valuable. What they do is essentially scrape the data that's in the DMS that technically does belong to the dealer. You pay a service fee to Authenticom to access your own data. So for instance, if you would like to scrape the data of all clients that have been in for service in the past 12 months, we all understand that sits in the DMS. Authenticom will put together a feed, and they will scrape your own system and provide you with the data that already belongs to you. Their price point to do so is extremely, I wouldn't say cheap, I would say that it's reasonable.
The thing is now that they've gone to an online DMS for everybody and cloud hosting, it's blown up as a humongous problem. I mean, 20 years ago when I started in the business, 20 different companies a night would dial in manually with modems over phone lines to download the sold data to be able to do phone follow-ups or email campaigns or whatever fingers they had going on with the data. But now what, isn't it like a $20,000 or more certification? And, you know, as a little vendor with CarChat24, we look at that, man, that's a lot of money for multiple vendor, you know, DMS providers to be able to check out solds and get some simple demographics even.
It's an enormous fee. It's an enormous fee, and it starts at 20, and it can get upward to $30,000. But the crux of the issue is why? What is the purpose of that fee? We're not communists. I understand everybody's entitled to profit, but fair and reasonable profit. And what's the reasoning behind why such a enormous fee is being attributed towards something that technically belongs to the dealer? And the take that ADP took on this, and I'm an ADP client and I'm fine with talking about this, is they played the bully card. And the bully card is that we don't want you going down this road. And in order to stop that, the argument made was that it was a safety concern. Meaning a data security concern.
It's cool to see a David go after Goliath, just from a standpoint of business growth and cheering for the little guy. And if it can help the industry sell and service cars better, then that's critical.
Yeah, CDK's position was that dealers couldn't be responsible for protecting the data. It was like they were doing a service for the dealers to keep their data secure. That would be their official position on it.
That's exactly right. The court's obviously thus far, the preliminary injunction is saying that's not the case. There's also elements in it as well where there was collusion between them and ADP and Reynolds that created a duopoly.
That was an interesting term I'd never heard before.
Yeah, I don't think any of us had.
Something else too, as far as I know, the vendors have to pay a monthly charge on top of the certification. Every vendor I speak to, on average, it's about 100 to 150 per month. Yet there's a few vendors out there that are charging these astronomical fees for the data in order to do this. And I've seen some of these invoices, and I'm like, how comes this company's charging $800 to pull the data, whereas I've got another company that pulls almost the exact same amount of data and is only charging us an additional $100 or absorbing the fee overall.
Well,
there's something else out there. I think there's some vendors out there that have figured out, here's an opportunity to sort of take advantage of the dealership and charge even more.
Well, Maryland dealers have
no one has talked about this yet.
One of the big things about this is being able to use that data for attribution. And one of the things we really wanted to talk about here was overall attribution. Where are these sales coming from? I used to shout out to David Kane, who was a contractor for Furman Automotive, used to consolidate all of our lead sources for us for all 14 stores.
Oh, wow.
And I used to fill out his spreadsheet every month for our GM and figure out the ROI. And I'd go into DMS trying to figure out where did that lead come from, because not always did it push. Sometimes the lead came in under the husband's name and then it went under the company and the wife's name, or, and we were pretty good with CRM. But, those last 10 deals, when you're talking a BMW store, $30,000 to $50,000 in profit attribution, that's key. So, from your perspective, Gregg and Jeff, how are you tracking attribution and why is it so important?
Well, let's look at lead sourcing in general as a whole. By and large, any dealer listening or watching, or Jeff, you could probably agree with this, is what's the most common lead source we're going to see in our CRM? Location, whatever it is that is tantamount to laziness. Aside from web leads, I'm talking leads in general. So in our CRM, we name the location leads is basically the catch-all of we don't know where the client came.
I got rid of location years ago.
Good for you.
Not even an option.
I love that.
I did that 13 years ago at this dealership. I'm back here 13 years later, and location is still not an option.
Well, attaboy. I follow your lead.
Somehow we ended up at the BMW store with an Atlanta radio station in our CRM, and you knew that the salesperson really wasn't asking when they would click the Atlanta radio station 600 miles away.
It comes down to training the salespeople, and that's a tough conversation because everyone. I mean, that's general.
Well, and accountability.
It's a cultural thing at the start, middle, and end. Is that it's a culture of, hey guys, what are we going to do as a dealership? Make sure that we have an understanding and a sense of the gravity toward what our advertising dollars are doing for us. Now, that can take us so far. Where it breaks down is everywhere after that, because the single biggest problem that faces the automotive dealership model when it comes to attribution is the fact that it's single sourced. Single source attribution is unrealistic, it's archaic, and it needs to change.
Yeah, well, Gregg, we've got leads in our CRM that are 2 years old, yet still active. And the attribution goes to the lead source that we haven't used in 2 years.
Right. Gregg and Jeff, I have a question for both of you guys. What percentage of your sales come from leads? Web leads, form fill leads, yes.
Roughly 40%.
And that's considerably more than the average dealership, if I'm not mistaken.
40%?
Yep.
I don't even want to say my number then.
Yeah.
Way to make them look bad.
Well, I mean, I sort of went away from the whole form fill lead attribution.
Yeah.
Because there's so many things involved. We get people that we have customers that come into the dealership, they go back home, they fill out a form lead, whether it's a website, cars.com, whatever it may be, that goes into the CRM. Well, there's again, back to what I said earlier, well, it's still an active lead from 3 years ago. So the attribution goes back to the 3 years ago. It doesn't make any sense to pull some type of, lead source per sale report out of the CRM because it's not showing me true attribution.
Well,
for me, I've just sort of gotten away from it. I'm just, for me, it's all about marketing. Let's go out there. Let's do what we need to do. Let's be where we need to be. Let's merchandise the hell out of our stuff, and let's just sell cars. And that's been my philosophy. I almost don't really care.
You make it sound so simple.
I don't care about attribution. I'm not saying I don't care about that. What I'm saying is I don't care about what was the last
click.
The multiple.
I would.
The problem is that it's the last click at single source attribution.
Well, Ed, I got a question. I got a question for Ed. Well, Ed, Ed, if I'm not mistaken, Cars.com is like making some moves, and not the only big vendor, but making some serious moves, recognizing that, hey, this person may not have only come in as a Cars.com lead. They could have hit your website once or 20 times. They could have bumped into one of your ads somewhere in passing. Didn't I hear that you're doing something with a attribution partner? I don't know if it was Clairvoy or somebody else. That
we work with a couple of different companies, including Clairvoy. Transparency is a partner with ours. I think the idea of, if you think about the customer journey when somebody is buying a car, I'm going to say it's the most complex customer journey out there. So they're visiting Cars.com, Auto Trader, Car Gurus, TrueCar. They're looking at review sites. They're going to dealer website, dealer website. They could be visiting 20 different websites. Each one of those stops is most likely influencing their decision to one extent or another. And some of the companies that we're partnering with, I think most of the big marketplace firms are doing something similar, just to help dealers make better decisions based on what's actually influencing the consumer, not just necessarily the last click.
Last click attribution is becoming a thing of the past, both from the dealer and the vendor side, and everybody's scrambling to have a new way to measure the influence. Brian Pash does a lot of work on his side around attribution. As you just mentioned, Cars.com has a new framework that they're introducing. Clairvoy is becoming a big name in this.
Jeff, so I have a question for you. When you talk about getting away from attribution as a whole, what are you?
I'm not trying to get away from attribution as a whole.
Well, what's expected out of your staff?
There's so many factors that go into it that, and it's so hard to track that I don't walk into a dealership and go, hey, pay your internet sales manager based on internet sales. I think that's complete crap.
So what's the expectation in the dealerships that you work with in terms of tracking, sourcing, and so forth?
Jeff Kershner says you don't need attribution. Jeff, I think we understand, Jeff, that's not your only priority.
I think what Jeff is saying, and I didn't mean to put you on the spot like that.
No, it's fine.
But what I think you'll agree with me and I think we're thinking the same way, is that at this point, at this stage of the game, anyone who's got their pulse on the digital game of attribution understands that it's fundamentally flawed.
Yeah.
However, from a staff standpoint, the guys on the floor, the system in place, we still want to see our staff placing emphasis on where that advertising money is being spent.
Agree.
How it is affecting them, how it is affecting our store, because that's how good dealers and operators run their operation, by making sure the culture understands that we don't just spend $80,000, whatever it is, a month for nothing.
Now,
I need you to know why. I need you to know what we're doing, why we're doing it.
Scared Ryan away, guys.
Greg, if I could ask you another question, but if you would have the ability to take people out of the equation, when I say people, your salespeople, your staff, and you could track the customer activity by IP address or pixel, would that make more sense than just asking people what brought you into the dealership?
Absolutely. And you can throw UTM in there. You can throw in a whole slew of things that the rest of the world does. So yes, to your point, all of the above. You want to see what your clients are doing, where they're coming from, and assign weight to each component of the process. It is a journey. Cars are complex.
I think the cars is the most complex purchase because there's so many moving pieces. But also, I think vendors need to be more cooperative with each other in sharing data. And I know a lot of let's call them premium vendors in the space are working to create conversations. And some of that goes back to the DMS lawsuit to begin with, because that's where the data ended. And we want to wrap that back to where it began. And sometimes it began from 16 different locations, but to his credit, Brian Pash is trying to amalgamate that information, and it's only going to get more complicated, but hopefully we get some APIs and some tools so that we're beyond ADF and simple. Pixel helps, UA helps, but we need some really, really engineered communication across all channels. And I think the more we have this conversation, the closer we're going to get. So man, it's been great having everybody on the Cars.com roundtable panel here. And let's rewind. What are 2 or 3 things that a dealer can take away? 1, know where your data is going, right, guys?
And
2,
right
know
now,
where your customers are coming
right
from
now,
to the
you're
best of
still
your ability.
limited.
And
You
3,
missed
man, get on DealerRefresh and get into the conversations, because
go.
these conversations only get bigger and bigger and deeper and deeper. And yeah, it's a public forum, so let's be careful not to vendor bash, but we also want an honest dialogue there and how we can work together to improve the whole industry.
Thanks to our sponsor, Cars.com. Visit dealers.cars.com or follow @DealerAdvantage to get insights and information to fuel your growth.